Listen, life is not about avoidance. Avoidance is the refuge of the weak. It's an illusion of control. No contact, as people like to say, is often a desperate attempt to escape a painful reality rather than confront it with strength. And let me tell you something, real power isn't found in silence. It's found in presence. It's found in mastery. It's found in the undeniable force of who you become in response to adversity. Cutting someone off completely, going no contact, feels like an act of strength. It's often praised as a definitive move, a way to assert dominance, to regain control. But the reality is that no contact, in its most common form, is a passive strategy. It is not an assertion of strength, but an admission of avoidance. It is the decision to step away from the battlefield rather than to face it head on. Now, does this mean that silence has no place in a powerful response? No, but silence without substance is just retreat. The key difference between the weak and the strong is not whether they engage or disengage, it's how they conduct themselves in the process. People mistake absence for power. They think that if they remove themselves entirely, if they refuse to respond, they will leave an irreversible void in someone's life. And perhaps in some cases they do, but more often than not, that void is temporary and it is soon filled with something or someone else. The truth is you do not become irreplaceable by disappearing. You become irreplaceable by evolving into something so valuable, so competent, that your absence is a glaring mistake, an undeniable loss. No contact, when used as an emotional crutch, often serves the same function as hiding under the covers from the monster in the closet. It is an attempt to remove discomfort rather than to develop the internal fortitude necessary to face it. And this is the crucial point. Strength is not in avoidance. It is in transformation. It is in meeting the pain directly, using it as fuel, and emerging on the other side as someone unrecognizable, someone unshakable. If your goal is to make someone regret losing you, to make them feel the weight of their decisions, then silence alone will not do it. Regret is not simply the result of losing something. It is the realization that what was lost was far greater than what was assumed. And that realization only happens when there is a clear and undeniable contrast between the past and the present. The person they took for granted, the person they thought they understood, if that person simply vanishes, there is no transformation, no growth to reflect upon. They may feel a momentary sting, a fleeting sense of emptiness, but it will not crush them. What crushes people is contrast. When they look back and see that you have not just moved on, but moved upward. When they realize that your absence isn't just space, it's an entire level of growth that they can no longer access. That's when the regret sets in. That's when they crumble under the weight of their own failure. So instead of retreating into silence, make your presence felt. Not in a desperate or reactive way, but in a way that exudes unshakable competence. Let your evolution be seen. Speak, but speak from a place of strength. Engage, but on your terms, with poise and restraint. Let them witness in real time that you are no longer the person they once had power over. That is what truly unsettles people, not the absence of contact, but the undeniable presence of transformation. And here's another hard truth. Going no contact as a form of control still gives the other person power over you, because in that case, your entire strategy is dictated by them, their presence, their past actions, their assumed reactions. Real power is not in reacting to them, but in rising so far above the situation that their behavior becomes irrelevant. You are not playing a game of punishment. You are playing a game of elevation. And the higher you rise, the less their opinion, their regret, or their acknowledgement even matters. This is why the most powerful people in the world are not those who cut others off in silence, but those who refine themselves to such a level that they no longer need to seek validation, revenge, or reaction. They do not disappear to prove a point. They grow to the extent that proving a point is unnecessary. Their very existence, their actions, their success, it speaks louder than silence ever could. So if you are tempted to go no contact purely as a way to make someone suffer, ask yourself, is that truly strength? Or is it just another way of hiding from your own growth? Because strength isn't in whether you talk to them or not. Strength is in whether you allow their past influence to define your future trajectory. If you can master yourself, if you can refine your mind, your emotions, your skills, your purpose, then what they feel or whether they crumble becomes secondary. You will have already won, not through avoidance, but through undeniable transformation. Influence is not about silence, nor is it about force. It is about understanding the deep psychological mechanisms that govern human perception, attachment, and regret. Too often, people believe that ignoring someone will automatically make them chase, that silence alone is a power move capable of shifting the balance in a relationship or interaction. But real power does not come from withdrawal. It comes from mastery over yourself, over your emotions, and over the way you shape the perceptions of others. If you want to truly influence someone, if you want to make them feel the weight of their own choices, then you must understand how human psychology works at its core. People are not drawn to emptiness. They are drawn to meaning, to value, to irreplaceability. If your only strategy is to remove yourself, you may create a temporary sense of curiosity, even absence, but that absence will not be enough to permanently shift their perception of you. True influence is about transformation and presence, strategic presence. It is not about making them wonder where you are. It is about making them unable to ignore who you have become. Human psychology operates on contrast. The brain does not measure value in absolutes. It measures it in relation to what is familiar, to what is lost, to what is newly realized. If someone has become indifferent to you or if they have taken you for granted, then cutting them off without any transformation on your end will not create the kind of regret or shift in perception that you may be hoping for. What does create that shift is undeniable growth. The realization that the person they once knew is no longer the same, that their previous assumptions, expectations, and assessments were deeply flawed, that they did not just lose you in a superficial sense, they lost something of profound and irreplaceable value. But how do you achieve this level of influence? You do it by mastering yourself first. Most people seek influence from a place of desperation. They want control over how someone else perceives them, while they themselves remain emotionally erratic, insecure, and internally dependent on external validation. This is why so many strategies, including the simplistic idea of no contact, fail, because they are rooted in reaction, not in power. Power comes from being independent of outcome. When you are no longer concerned with whether or not they regret losing you, that is when they start to feel the weight of their decision, not because you tried to make them, but because the version of you that exists now is one they never predicted and one they can no longer reach. Controlled presence is more powerful than total absence. If you want to make someone feel regret, if you want them to truly recognize your worth, then you must allow them to see what they have lost, not through games, not through silence, but through the undeniable contrast of your transformation. This is why simply cutting someone off is weak. It relies on a passive hope that they will fill in the blanks on their own. But people do not often do this. Instead, they move on, they replace, they rationalize. Unless, of course, what they lost was so distinctly valuable that their mind cannot ignore it. Influence is not about making someone miss you for a moment. It is about making them unable to dismiss you long term. And that only happens when they see the gap between what you were and what you are now. When they realize, too late, that their perception of you was outdated, that they miscalculated, that the person they dismissed is now someone who would never even consider them an option. This is where real power lies, not in their reaction, but in your evolution to a point where their reaction becomes irrelevant. And this is the paradox of influence. The less you try to control someone, the more control you ultimately gain. Not through manipulation, not through petty tactics, but through a sheer, undeniable shift in who you are. When you elevate yourself beyond who you used to be, when your presence, however minimal, commands attention. That is when they feel the full weight of what they lost. Not because you tried to make them feel it, but because your transformation forced them to confront it. The goal is not to get them back. The goal is not even to make them suffer. The goal is to become so powerful, so evolved, that the only logical conclusion they can reach is that letting you go was their biggest mistake. But by the time they realize it, you are so far ahead, mentally, emotionally, and physically, that their regret becomes nothing more than their own burden to carry. And that is the ultimate psychological victory, not through avoidance, but through undeniable growth. Pain is inevitable. At some point in life, you will experience loss, betrayal, or rejection, and these moments will test you. They will expose your vulnerabilities, your fears, and the gaps in your self-perception. And when this happens, most people retreat. They crumble under the weight of the experience, allowing it to define them, allowing it to dictate their future interactions, their self-worth, and their view of the world. But there is another path, one that few are willing to take because it requires something uncomfortable. It requires that you transform pain into fuel, that you take the very thing designed to break you and use it to build something stronger than ever before. The idea that pain is purely negative is one of the greatest misconceptions people hold. Pain is neutral. It is neither good nor bad. It is simply energy, raw and unshaped, waiting to be directed. What makes the difference is what you do with it. You can let it consume you, turn you bitter, make you fearful of future experiences, or you can use it as the catalyst for transformation. This is what separates those who thrive after hardship from those who stay trapped in the cycle of their suffering. The strongest people in the world, the ones who command respect, who cannot be ignored, are not those who have avoided pain. They are those who have confronted it, understood it, and used it to forge something unbreakable. When someone walks away from you, when they dismiss your value, when they fail to see your worth, the immediate response for most people is to shrink. They feel inadequate, questioning themselves, replaying every moment, every word, trying to make sense of why they were not enough. But here is the truth. Your worth was never dependent on their perception of you. And if they failed to see it, that is not your failure. It is theirs, but what happens next is crucial because now you stand at a crossroads. You can let their decision define your self-worth, or you can take that pain and use it as the fire that fuels your transformation. People are driven by contrast. They do not recognize loss in the moment they walk away. They recognize it when they see what they left behind has become something extraordinary, something they can no longer reach. If you want to make someone regret losing you, it is not enough to disappear. Disappearing is passive. What truly unsettles people, what truly makes them question their choices, is seeing undeniable transformation, seeing that the person they underestimated, the person they took for granted, has evolved into something so strong, so composed, so powerful, that they now feel foolish for ever thinking otherwise. And here is the key. This transformation is not about them. It is about you, because the goal is not to make them suffer. The goal is not even to get revenge. The goal is to become someone who no longer needs their validation, someone whose self-worth is so deeply rooted in their own competence, in their own development, that external opinions lose their grip. This is why pain is necessary, because it is the one thing that forces you to confront your weaknesses, your patterns, your illusions. It reveals what you need to change, what you need to master. And if you have the courage to face it rather than avoid it, it becomes the very thing that propels you forward. Most people want growth without struggle, but that is not how life works. Every powerful transformation is born out of discomfort. Strength is not developed in ease, it is developed in adversity. So when you feel that sting of rejection, when you feel the weight of loss pressing down on you, do not waste that energy on self-pity. Do not let it make you smaller. Use it. Channel it into something productive. Build yourself into a person so undeniably strong, so articulate, so disciplined, that the mere sight of you forces people to confront their own inadequacy. Because here is the reality. When you elevate yourself, when you rise above the version of you that they once knew, they will feel it. Even if they never say it, even if they never admit it, they will feel it. And by that point, it will no longer matter to you, because the version of you that emerges from this process will be one that no longer seeks validation, no longer plays games, no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. This is what true power looks like. It is not found in revenge. It is not found in petty tactics. It is found in evolution, in becoming the kind of person whose presence commands respect, not because you demand it, but because you embody it. And the irony, by the time they realize what they lost, you will have outgrown the very need for them to realize it at all. That is when you have truly won, not by making them suffer, but by becoming something so powerful that their absence becomes irrelevant. Emotional reactivity is a weakness. It is the single most predictable and exploitable trait that people have. The moment someone knows how to provoke you, how to control your emotional state, they own you. They don't have to be stronger than you. They don't have to be more intelligent, more capable, or more disciplined. They just have to understand what buttons to push. And as long as you remain reactive, they will keep pressing them. This is why so many people fail when dealing with conflict, rejection, or manipulation. They believe that their emotions justify their actions, that expressing their frustration, their sadness, their rage will somehow make them heard, understood, or respected. But in reality, it does the opposite. It makes them predictable. It makes them weak. It makes them easy to manipulate. People assume that power is about dominance, about making the other person feel inferior through words, actions, or even silence. But real power is about control, not over others, but over yourself. If you can master your own reactions, if you can become the type of person who remains composed, articulate, and strategic in every situation, then you have already won. Because the moment someone can no longer predict your response, they lose the ability to control you. They lose the ability to manipulate your emotions, to draw you into their game, to make you react in a way that benefits them. This is what separates the strong from the weak. Most people, when they experience betrayal, rejection, or disrespect, either lash out impulsively or withdraw completely. They either react emotionally, saying things they later regret, or they retreat into silence, believing that avoidance is the solution. But both of these responses are flawed. One is a sign of a lack of control, the other a sign of avoidance. The real path forward is neither emotional explosion nor complete detachment. It is controlled engagement, the ability to respond with intention, not impulse, to speak when it serves a purpose, to remain silent when it benefits you, and to always carry yourself with an unshakable sense of control. Imagine this. Someone tries to provoke you, to get a reaction out of you, to make you angry or desperate or insecure. But instead of giving them what they expect, instead of reacting in a way that validates their assumptions about you, you remain calm. You look them in the eye, steady, unbothered. You choose your words carefully if you choose to speak at all. Your presence alone carries more weight than their attempts to shake you. This is power, not in an aggressive or manipulative way, but in a way that is rooted in self-mastery. You are no longer playing their game. You have risen above it, and they can feel it. The reason this is so effective is because most people expect others to operate on the same emotional wavelength that they do. If they are angry, they expect you to be angry. If they try to hurt you, they expect you to either fight back or retreat in defeat. But when you do neither, when you instead stand firm, collected, indifferent to their provocations, it unsettles them. It forces them to reassess their perception of you. And this is where the psychological shift happens. The moment they realize that they no longer have an effect on you, that they can no longer dictate your emotional state, they begin to lose confidence in their own position. They begin to doubt themselves, to question whether they were wrong about you, whether they underestimated you. And this is where regret, insecurity, and second guessing start to take hold in their mind. But the key to this level of control is discipline. It does not come naturally. It must be cultivated, trained, and refined through conscious effort. You must learn to recognize your emotional impulses before they take over. You must learn to pause, to assess, to determine whether a response is truly necessary or whether silence would serve you better. You must develop the ability to remain unaffected, not because you suppress your emotions, but because you have learned to channel them into something productive, something that strengthens you rather than weakens you. And this does not mean that you never respond, that you never engage. It means that when you do, it is always on your terms. You are never dragged into someone else's emotional chaos. You dictate the flow of the interaction. You choose when and how to speak. And when you do, your words are precise, calculated, and impossible to ignore. This is what makes people take notice. This is what makes them reconsider their actions, their assumptions, their perception of you, not desperate attempts to prove your worth, not emotional outbursts, but controlled, undeniable presence. Ultimately, power is not about how loud you are, how aggressive you can be, or how much you can make someone suffer. Power is about how untouchable you become, how little external events shake your internal state, how composed you remain in situations where others would fall apart. This is what makes people crumble, not your words, not your silence, but the sheer realization that they can no longer affect you in the way they once could, that you have moved beyond their reach, beyond their influence, beyond their ability to dictate your emotions. And when that realization sets in, it is not you who suffers, it is them. Confidence is not given, it is built. It is earned through struggle, discipline, and relentless self-improvement. Many people believe that confidence is something that just appears, that one day they will wake up feeling secure, powerful, and in control. But that is not how it works. Confidence is not a feeling, it is a byproduct of competence. It is what happens when you develop yourself to such a degree that self-doubt becomes irrelevant, that external validation becomes unnecessary, and that the opinions of others lose their grip on your sense of identity. The mistake most people make is that they seek confidence first, thinking it will lead to success. But confidence does not precede success, it follows it. You do not become confident by telling yourself you are. You become confident by proving to yourself that you are capable, that you are disciplined, that you are worthy of respect. This is why superficial affirmations and empty self-help tactics fail, because confidence is not built on words, it is built on evidence. And that evidence comes from your actions, from the hard work you put in when no one is watching, from the skills you develop, from the discomfort you push through, from the resilience you forge in the face of hardship. When someone loses you, when they underestimate you, when they dismiss your worth, the greatest response is not anger, not desperation, and not retreat. It is transformation. Not transformation for their sake, not as some grand performance to make them regret their choices, but as a genuine commitment to becoming the best possible version of yourself. And when you do this, when you build yourself into something undeniable, people take notice, not because you demand their attention, but because your very presence commands it. True confidence is not loud. It does not need to be announced. It does not need validation or reassurance. It is quiet, steady, and unshakable. It is the way you carry yourself, the way you speak, the way you move through the world with certainty, not because you pretend to be strong, but because you have built the foundation of true strength. This is what people truly respect. This is what makes them reconsider their perceptions of you, not because you told them to, but because your actions left them no choice. And here is the hard truth. Most people will not take you seriously until you give them a reason to. This is not because they are cruel, but because human psychology is built on pattern recognition. People categorize others based on what they know, what they assume, and what they have seen before. If you were weak, needy, insecure, or dependent in the past, that is how they will remember you. And simply cutting them off will not change that memory. What changes it is contrast the undeniable evidence that you are no longer the person they assumed you to be, that the version of you they dismissed is gone, replaced by someone far more capable, far more resilient, far more valuable. But this transformation must be real. It cannot be faked because people can sense pretense. They can see through the person who is trying too hard to appear confident, who is performing strength rather than embodying it. Real confidence does not come from external validation. It comes from proving to yourself through action and discipline that you are capable. And this is the true power of transformation. It is not about revenge. It is not about proving people wrong. It is about proving to yourself that you are everything you once hoped to be and more. This is why self-improvement is the most powerful response to loss, rejection, or betrayal. Because when you rise, when you elevate yourself beyond the level at which they last saw you, they will feel it. They may never say it, they may never admit it, but they will know. And that realization that they once had access to you but no longer do is what creates the deepest sense of regret. Not because you wanted them to regret, but because they now see what they can never have again. And by that point, you will have moved so far ahead that their regret will mean nothing to you. The goal is not to make them suffer. The goal is to become so powerful, so competent, so undeniably valuable that their perception of you becomes irrelevant. You will no longer seek their validation, their approval, or their attention because you will have outgrown the need for any of it. And when you reach that level, you will realize something profound. Confidence was never about them. It was never about proving anything to anyone. It was always about proving to yourself that you were capable of more, that you were worthy of more, that you could rise above whatever tried to break you. So if you want true confidence, do not chase it, build it, earn it, forge it in the fire of discipline, of resilience, of relentless self-improvement. Become the kind of person whose presence cannot be ignored, not because you demand attention, but because your very existence commands respect. And by the time they realize what they lost, you will be so far ahead that their regret will be nothing more than an afterthought. That is true power, that is true confidence, and that is the ultimate form of transformation. The ultimate victory is not found in revenge, nor in making someone suffer for underestimating you. It is found in transformation, true, undeniable self-mastery that renders their opinions, their actions, and their regrets irrelevant. The person you once were, the one they dismissed or took for granted, no longer exists. In their place stands someone disciplined, composed, and powerful, not because you sought their validation, but because you sought your own evolution. No contact alone is passive. It is an absence, a void, a silent retreat. But transformation, becoming something so undeniably strong, so confident, so competent, is a force. It is an energy they cannot ignore even if they try. And by the time they realize what they lost, you will have long outgrown the need for them to realize it at all. Your power lies not in their reaction, but in your ability to rise, to rebuild, and to move forward with an unshakable sense of self. Because in the end, it was never about them, it was always about you.